Welcome to Massive Passive Cash Flow, the podcast that guides professionals to financial prosperity. Join our community and let's start building your wealth. Here's your host, Gary Wilson.
Welcome back to the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host, and we're glad to have you back. If you wouldn't mind, if you haven't already done so, is please subscribe to the podcast. It's on 30 different channels, including the one, obviously, you're listening to. So whichever one your favorite is, subscribe there. It actually helps things a lot when you do that. And while you're online, please visit the globalinvestoragent.com website. So for all of us investors, this is where you can locate agents who are trained to work with you and I, the investor. They're not your typical agent. They know how to identify, analyze, and negotiate on and off market deals, which is a really big deal in today's market. And if you are an agent, don't panic. I know volume's down. We have all the numbers. Not time to panic, it's time to prepare. So I suggest you click on the Learn More button, learn how to make this part of your business model, because I can tell you from personal experience, you'll make 4 times as many transactions from investors as you will from traditional clients. We love our owner-occupants. I'm not knocking them, I'm just telling you, this is a great way to learn and earn with the use of your license. So, hey, without further ado, let me introduce you to Kevin Amolsch from beautiful Wheat Ridge, Colorado. I've actually been there, which is kind of nice. And a beautiful part of the country. So, Kevin, thanks, man, for joining us. I know we had a great conversation leading up to this, but I'm really excited to do this podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gary. I'm really excited to be here. And you say beautiful Colorado, which it is, but gosh, you showed me the deck that you're sitting on right now. Your office at home, it's beautiful there too.
Yeah, I really am. I know how blessed I am because my office is outdoors and I get the view of the mountains and. I can't. Every day I wake up, just pinch me. I'm living the dream life. But it all started with real estate. It really did, and a lot of it came down to one of the most important topics or subjects in real estate, which is how do you get the money for all these deals? And I know that you've done a lot yourself in that world of financing. There's lots of terminology and methods and strategies. But if we could, Kevin, can we start with just start at the beginning, maybe. How did you actually get to this point where you are? I mean, tell us a little bit about your journey to get here, and then I'll follow up with some questions, and we can give everybody some real good meat and potatoes they can use.
Yeah, it's been over 2 decades now, so it's been quite the journey. So I'll take you all the way back to high school. I was in high school, and I got to tell you, I did not like it. I did not like tests. I did not like the homework. I did not like all of that. But I knew when I graduated, I can't just do nothing. Like I got to do something to work towards a career. So I did not go to college. Instead, I went into the military. The Army. They sold me on laser tag. Hey, if you come for us or with us, and we're going to teach you how to play laser tag, and you'll do that for a living. So they sold me. I went into the Army. And the reason that's important is because I wasn't getting paid a lot, but I wasn't spending money either. The military takes care of everything. My room and board, my food, everything was taken care of. So I had a little savings account going. So I started reading books about investing because I wanted to know where's the best place to get a return on the small savings account that I had. And then I was reading, the Rich Dad, Poor Dads and this type of thing. And all the experts that I was attracted to were telling me real estate was the best investment to make. So I just started focusing in on that. And I bought my first house before I got out of the Army, moved into it when I did get out, brought in some roommates, helped me pay for my bills. And I was going to college at that point. I finally did go back to school and get my degree. But it was then, actually 2 years after I bought that one, I moved out of it and kept it as a rental. And it was really then that I decided that real estate really does work. All the books that I was reading was true. It's not so easy necessarily, but it absolutely works. I saw the appreciation. I saw the cash flow, my tenant paying off my debt for me. Heck yeah, I'm doing this. So I went head in and I decided, you know what? This is not just an investment play here, Gary. This is a career move. This is what I wanted to do to get rich. This is what I wanted to do with my life. And I just dug in and started buying 1-2 houses a month. Here I am, 21 years old, and I'm in college, working part-time, and I'm still buying a house or 2 a month. It was crazy. I would be calling motivated sellers, trying to set up appointments for the weekend as I was walking between classes across campus. So that's how I got my start.
That's awesome. Well, okay, let's do this. I'm going to go into the some of the information I wrote down earlier. So we got the story. You served in the Army. went to college, and all the while you were learning about investing. And I sort of same thing with me. I got to college, and my college roommate, his first name was Socrates, actually, and his dad, who came from Greece into the States, showed us how to invest. Never gave us a dime, showed us how to invest. So I definitely value education. In fact, I have a team of agents we call investor agents it's education based, because I think everything begins with education. It's education plus information plus action equals results. And when you align yourself with the right people, you generally get the right education, the right information, take the right action, and get the right results. so so what led you to kind of focus on the financing side of real estate? Was there a point in time where you realized there was a need there, or kind of take us down that path if you don't mind a little bit,
Yeah, for sure. So what I learned while I was buying these house or two every single month was, when you structure a real estate transaction, the way you negotiate with the seller, the words you use, the contracts you use, how you write up that offer, all of that has everything to do with how you're going to finance it. You have to understand that financing piece, and then that's how you're going to structure your offer to your seller. So I really love the financing because I just love the deal structure. I love the negotiation. I love putting it together. So I just kind of started migrating towards the financing side of it. And then back before the SAFE Act, so I'm taking you back here, but before the crash and everything, and then all the regulations that came in, I was recruited to be a mortgage broker. So I was originating loans for owner occupied, all of it, just like a normal mortgage broker would. The problem was we were now getting into a time where interest rates were rising. Things were starting to get a little shaky. Guidelines started tightening and changing. And so I was having conversations with sellers like, you are approved for a loan up to this amount. Go find a house. Let's get this done. They find their dream home. And then by the time they find that house and get it locked up, get it under contract, well, they're no longer approved for the loan. So now I'm making these phone calls like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Your dream home, all this emotion, Gary, there's a ton of emotion in this business.
Oh yeah.
When you have someone that wants to move into a property, and then I'm the one calling them, crushing their dreams, and I had enough, like no more of this. I need control of my business. And so that's when I started raising private capital, and I used that to make loans to real estate investors. I was an investor. I had about 60 houses at the time. So I knew what I was doing. I wanted to help more real estate investors. So I just started raising private capital so I could make the lending decisions, and then I could service those loans.
Yeah. Well, so along the way, and this may be a two-part question, or you can answer it as an investor investing in properties, but also as a private lender. Just like any of us, when we grow and learn a new set of skills, sometimes we learn from the school of hard knocks. And the beautiful thing about real estate, though, is it's a very forgiving commodity. You can make a mistake in real estate and still come out ahead if you're just patient. You can improvise, adapt. You can modify a property. You can divide it. You can refinance it. All kinds of things. But is there one mistake or error you can think of, you can recall, that was that you really learned a really big lesson from, or something that you used to share with others?
Oh gosh, I've made 7-figure mistakes. So I've made a ton of mistakes. But I think the biggest one here, and I talk about this on some other podcasts, but I want to bring it up because I think it's that important. The goals that you set for yourself are so incredibly powerful, especially if you're a high achiever, which I assume if you're listening to this, you are. If you're a high achiever and you set a goal, you're going to fight like hell to get that goal. So for me, my goals, when I'm taking you way back here again, my goals was a deal a month. I wanted to be able to do a deal a month so that I could tell people, look, I'm buying a deal every single month. I wanted to be on the real estate forums, the online groups, and telling people how successful I am. And I wanted people to look up to me and respect me. And so my goal was all around that. And what I learned from that mistake is, because I'm a high achiever, I was hitting that goal. But to hit that goal of one deal a month doesn't mean that I had to do a good deal a month. I just had to do a deal a month so that I could feel good about my goals. And that's probably the largest mistake I made, because I was almost at 60 houses when I went into 2008.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And you know how that story ends, right?
Yeah. What's amazing is when that hit, people were calling for that as early as the early 2000s, 5, 6, 7 years in advance. And there was actually one guy, and I think it might have been Barron himself from Barron magazine, the financial magazine. In the late 90s, I remember, I think that's who it was saying, we're going to have a crash. Everybody was thinking, you're nuts. We're not going to have a crash. This thing is, because in the 70s, just for everybody, it's a quick little background here. There was actually, if you ever watch The Big Short, it kind of gives you this the same kind of stories. That's when a financial genius realized they could actually package up mortgages and sell them in blocks through Wall Street. And you and I could invest in them like through mutual funds, okay, which allow banks to basically sell their mortgages, recoup their capital, and relend it out again, fractional lending. And also there was a big push. That's when housing or development was created. Big push for home ownership, going great for several years, 2 decades to be exact. Then in the 90s, the administration at the time in Washington decided to lower the thresholds, the requirements for borrowing money. It allowed more people to borrow money to buy homes. And that created this new industry called mortgage brokers. So these mortgage brokers are out there, packaging up loan applications to feed to the primary lenders. And when that pool of buyers started dwindling, they started getting loose with the money. Loose meaning making 125% home equity loans and crazy things like that. I'm like, the writing is on the wall. I'm not a genius, but I knew enough about math to realize this isn't going to last. So, thankfully where I was is we took a pretty good beating in the recession, but we'd had enough long-term ownership and enough equity, and we had properties in multiple areas. So we were going a lot of months where people weren't able to pay rent sometimes or pay partial rent. We had vacancies, things like that. It was a painful time, but thankfully we made it through. Although I know people that just got crushed. I mean, particularly in the commercial world, people that had commercial loans, that was a rough time. So, but one thing I learned was this: what goes up must go down. But the good news is this: what goes down will go back up again. And look at where we are now. Essentially 12 years after I would consider when we started coming out of that last recession. 2011 is when we started digging out. Now it's been 12 more years, and look at what's happened the last couple of years. Now I sold a bunch of properties too. Believe me, I wish, if there's a big lesson here, guys, for me to you is, boy, I wish I'd have held on to every property I ever sold, with some few exceptions. You can never tell how far they're going to always go back up again. So I'm going way down a rabbit hole here, and I apologize. But what I want to get into is what are some of the strategies that people can use when we look at creative purchasing techniques, creative financing techniques, investing passively in real estate, in the different options, hard money lending and so forth. Do we have time to talk about some of those topics? Is that okay if we do that, Kevin?
Yeah, let's do that. If we have time, we should come back to your comment about the 90s and that crash, because I think what we're going into right now is very much more similar to that recession than what the 2008. Now, you described it leading up to the 2008. I think that we saw that kind of lending decisions back when the savings and loan crisis happened. And I wasn't investing in real estate then. I had to study and learn this. So a lot of us listening might not even know that savings and loan crisis, but it's very similar to 2008. But that led up to a recession in the early 90s also.
Yeah.
And that's one that most recessions surprisingly don't impact or negatively impact real estate values. The 90s one did, and the 2008 one did. So we'll see what happens going forward. But let me answer your question. So some of the types of financing that's out there. Look, banks are starting to tighten up, right? When you have some of your peers go under, like we had 3 this year, you start to get a little bit nervous. The FDIC is absolutely looking at this sector. There's a high likelihood there's going to be more M&A, merger and acquisitions. There's a high likelihood there's going to be more takeovers by the government because of here's why. I'll make it really simple. Banks need to invest money. They need to invest deposits to earn profit, right? So if they're not in mortgages and car loans and credit cards, they put it in real safe, what we call safe investments, which is treasuries. Now, treasuries is going to be low interest rate, long-term debt, but it's supposed to be the safest debt we could get. The problem is if you have to liquidate treasuries and interest rates have risen like we have seen now, then those values of those treasuries go way down. So what we thought was risk-free actually carries a ton of risk. And now we have to liquidate at losses. And that's what took down Silicon Valley. And I think there's other banks in that same position. And it's all by design. And it's not a conspiracy. The government has said this. We are going to create pain. And they do that by rising interest rates. So that's what we're seeing right now. But to answer your question, as banks start to tighten, we have to find other ways to get the money to do our deals. So I go back to my roots where I was doing lease options and subject tos and owner carried transactions. You probably know a lot about this with your experience, but those are the prime opportunities in an environment like we're in now. And the reason I say that is because you could take over payments on loans that are in the 3% range. And if you're borrowing at 3% or taking over a loan at 3%, everybody else is borrowing at 7%. Who could pay more for the house? Right? You could pay more because your debt's better. So I think that's where we're going to see some opportunities. Outside of the owner carry stuff, there's lots of private capital out there. People are starting to understand that real estate is a safe investment. They want to get their money out of Wall Street. There's a lot of fear in Wall Street right now. I see headlines every single day that we're heading towards a bear market, right? So I don't know if we are or not. I'm not making any predictions, but there's a chance of that. And so if you could get your money into real estate, it just feels safer. So people are putting money into debt. They're loaning their friends, their family, other people at the real estate association money. And then you could go out and get more institutional private capital, like hard money loans, like what I do, or organized private capital and that kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about the private money and hard money. And I want people to recognize that not all private lending, not all private money is hard money, but all hard money does fall within the general context of private money. But I've seen, hard money loans as high as 15% and a whole bunch of points. And I've seen private money where, like today's market, you can maybe get, 10% versus paying 12 or 15%. So let's talk about what you're doing in that space. So you're able to attract investors who want to invest passively, so they'll provide some funding. Then you've got a pool of money that you can lend out to people wanting to buy rentals and flip homes, or if it kind of paint us that picture, if you don't mind, Kevin.
Yeah. So let me talk about the loan product first, so you can understand that, and then we'll talk about the investment side of it. We're about a little over 160 million. The loans that we offer is all short-term value add. So think about your beat up old houses that need to get fixed and flipped, like we see on TV, right? We do a ton of financing on fix and flips. We do see some bridge rehab loans. So if you're going to buy a property, fix it up, and then you want to keep it as a rental, private money and hard money has much higher leverage. So you can get in for little or maybe sometimes even no money down, fix up a house, get it producing cash flow, and then it'll go to Fannie Mae. So you refinance and keep it. A lot of that's the residential side. New construction fits in that as well. On the commercial side, it's just repositioning. So this one deal we did was so cool. It's that old Safeway building, the big box, and then they carve it up, and now there's a swim school and a gym and something else. And so they just demised it and added value by shrinking the size, making a different use. We're seeing malls convert to storage units. You're hearing all over the news about office going to residential. So whatever you can do to add value, hard money and bridge financing, that's where they come in, because banks don't want that stuff. Banks want cash flow producing assets. So if it's not producing cash flow day one, banks won't look at it. So you really need alternative options for that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you bringing it up. I know I've traveled quite a bit. I used to travel the U.S. and Canada teaching. Literally like every day and every week.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah. And then now after the pandemic, during the pandemic years, I was spending a lot of time in Florida. And Florida is actually my state of residence, even though I'm not really there a lot. But one of the malls there, I'll just tell you, was the mall in Sarasota was virtually empty. And its only use was to be administering the vaccines. That's what they were using it for. It was completely empty. And ever since then, it's been empty. But now they put in a pickleball court in there. They have done some storage. Also, the local, a lot of the SPCA, the organizations that find stray pets and things like that, they moved in. They need a lot of space, and then they consolidated, and a variety of uses. And I've even seen some other things going on now. There's other malls that I've seen that are back up and running, like full steam ahead. It's just and so how do you determine, what the trend is? What's the pattern going to be when you have such a mix there? But in any case, wherever there's adversity and uncertainty, there's always opportunity.
Totally. I agree.
So where you are, your space then is if an owner of a mall wants to figure out, or has figured out what they can do with their space and repurposing, they need money to do that. They could typically come to the organization because the traditional banks, it's way outside their wheelhouse. It doesn't fit their model, their lending model. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, or purchase.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be owned currently. We're seeing a lot of, the mortgage-backed securities is in trouble, right? We hear about the commercial mortgage-backed securities. That whole market is in trouble. So we're starting to see special servicers liquidate assets, and so investors that are smart and understand how to reposition or can see the vision, the creativity. One of the things I love about real estate is how creative you could be with this. But I mean, that's on the commercial side. So we're mostly on the residential side. So the bread and butter fix and flip, that's really our bread and butter. But we're about 20% or so, a little under that on the commercial side. I love the commercial side. It's so fun, but I feel safer on the residential side. So I want to keep the portfolio allocation closer to 80-20.
Okay.
Yeah, residential.
Well,
look,
that's a good mix.
You could commercial could sit vacant for years, as you saw with your mall. But a house, you could clean that up and get rid of it pretty quickly. Right? You price that thing right, and it's a clean home. It's gone. I don't care what market you're in.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good mix. The team that I run, it's majority residential, but residential includes anything up to including 4 units. So it includes fourplexes down to singles and flips. On the commercial side, 5 and above, and we're about 12% of our transactions are truly commercial. But so back to the lending. Then you not only do you attract the borrowers, the people who want to flip the homes and buy properties and do the short-term loans, but also the money people, the people that provide the funding. Is that how does that work, and why would a surgeon who wants to be in real estate just does not have the time? They don't have the time or the patience to do all that you and I do, but they want to participate. What's a good reason for them to choose your company, for them to provide their funding for, that gets lent out to the flippers and so forth?
Hi, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for participating in the Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. Also wanted to let you know that the book Global Investor Agent is officially out in print and in Kindle on Amazon. You can get it by clicking on the link right here. If you are an agent, definitely grab yourself a copy. This book, guys, was not just written by me. I also included 8 other investor agents from around the country. And I didn't just handpick them. I literally opened it up to the entire audience, and it was first come, first serve. So you're going to get feedback from brand new agents all the way up to top 25 team leaders, some on my team, some are not on my team, with valuable insight and instructions and guidance and actual checklists to follow to not just survive but thrive in this market. I know you're looking for that advantage, and this is it. By the way, if you are an investor, grab a copy for your agent, and for everybody, all profits from the sale of the book, Kindle and print, all go to the Healing House Foundation, 100%. Thank you for doing that too, guys. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, Gary, thank you for bringing me back to that. So we do bring in private capital to make these loans, right? And I think before I go into why us, I don't want this to be a big pitch. I really do want to provide value here. Why private lend at all? I mean, you can go out and buy a piece of property and do better, quite honestly, if you hold that property long term and you're willing to go through the headaches and the hassles that come with owning rental properties. You will do better owning the real estate than you will lending on it. The problem is you're going to have to deal with tenants and toilets, and we could talk about stories. And I just had one I just went through last week of dealing with that. So it's not all rainbows and roses, as they say, right? It could be challenging, and there is some market movement. It typically goes up over time. We've seen that over the years, but it can come down as well. Private notes, assuming there's no default, and we could talk more about that, but assuming there's no default, they don't lose value. The collateral behind the loan can go up and down, but the note itself stays at the face value stays the same. So it really does steady out or or bring some consistency to an overall portfolio. So even if you are investing in real estate, you might want to consider loans against real estate also, just for some diversification. But it's going to produce income. It very rarely stops. It has to be a default, or it's not going to stop. You don't have tenant turnovers, right? So it's going to be cash flow. It's going to be consistent. It's secured. You can insure the property that's giving you the collateral. There's a lot of benefits to why somebody would want to private lend. You mentioned 15% and a whole bunch of points. That's expensive, right? We started out in this business. I was charging 4 and 15. That's, for the lender, that's fantastic. Now we are seeing rates go back up a little bit, but you could see how profitable this business can be when you start talking about 15% interest rates. We don't charge that. We're at 12%. We pay our investors 8%. So there is spread there. You could see that I'm doing this for profit, right? I am going to make this spread, but now you got an 8% in a fund that's spread over a lot of different properties, lots of diversification, distributions every month. And this is very different than most funds and all syndications that I've seen. It's liquid. You want your money back, we'll give it back to you. So that's going to be something that's very unique to most investments that you're going to see in this space. Yeah.
So you've got liquidity, plus you've got diversity. So let's talk about that a little bit. Geography. Will you lend to borrowers in most of the U.S., or is it more in certain markets that you know, like the Denver market, for example, in Kansas City? Tell us a little bit about that, about the geography and where flippers can borrow the money from it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So we have 4 primary markets, and on the residential side, we are only in the 4. And the reason for that is we want to be able to go out and touch the asset. So we're in Colorado, up and down the Front Range. We're in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. We're in Wisconsin and Milwaukee, and then we're in Washington, D.C. And I know that's spread out all over the place, and there's like no correlation here. There's a specific story behind each one of those moves, but as we expand, we identify a target market, right? And then assuming it hits all of like our matrix, then we're going to go in. We're growing slow because it's a capital intensive business, and we're very, very careful. Part of the reason you want to be geographically focused is because of your relationships and your network. So if we do find ourselves in trouble, like we're in Minnesota, we have 2 properties right now, 1 3-plex, 1 duplex. One of them we have to rehab and go retail. So we're going to do the fix and flip before close on both of these. The other one, we're scraping it and we're going to build it. And we might just keep that one. So we always have that option to just keep it and rent it out. And so we don't have to take losses, right? So those are the markets we're in on the residential side. We loan up to 70% of the value. So it's pretty conservative lending. We're under 2%, 1.7% default rate. On the commercial side, we'll go nationwide, but what we're really doing here is following our clients. We're not necessarily targeting a market. So we find a client that has a good, strong balance sheet, a strong guarantee. We always require that, and they're doing quality projects. We want to go with them, but we're more conservative. So we're only going to loan 65% on the commercial. And I go down 5% on those because I think the market can move more on that in the commercial space. Yeah. And it can take a long time to either liquidate or rent out. So we're just a little bit more careful in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. You can always tell if you want to look at the future in real estate. Now, this isn't always true, of course, but in certain markets, look at commercial. So look at big development. So when the big money that lends to big development projects, big development meaning they're like building a 25-story building with 1 million cubic square feet, multi-use, senior citizen housing, retail, office, subterranean garage, things like that. Or I saw a development one time where they had a Ferris wheel that was part of the development. It was a housing community with shopping and pools and right on the river. And you could just see when the Fed started raising rates, the first part of last year, all of a sudden the big money started tightening up. And some of those projects are just sitting there right now because the money kept going, the rates kept going up, for the last year and a half, rates have gone up. And but those guys are smart. The reason they have so much money is because they're pretty good with money,
Right. Exactly.
but
Right.
that has such a ripple effect, you think about all the jobs that they were being anticipated, and now they're really not going to be there, at least for the time being. And in places, land will sit there, owners get antsy, all kinds of things happen. But I will tell you, at the end of the day, a lot of investors, once they learn the skills and develop their talent in the residential side, will move into commercial, and everything is just bigger. Their numbers are bigger, their projects are bigger, the risks are bigger, but their rewards are also bigger.
That's
So
true.
if you can stand the wait, sometimes you have to wait a little bit. Something you think is going to be a year ends up being 3 years, or even longer. Usually it's gonna pay off. You just have to have staying power. But so I appreciate you sharing that. So on the residential side, it was interesting because you mentioned, the first three I was okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
Eastern part of Colorado, Twin Cities, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and all of a sudden there's Washington D.C.
Yeah.
up there by itself. That's pretty
I get it
interesting.
all the time.
Yep, I'm sure there's a story there. My dad, we lived around D.C. when I was growing up because he was the role that he played in the government, and very exciting, great place to grow up because it was very international, and we got to travel. I mean, I was born in Germany. We've lived in Canada, and friends from all over the world. And when I moved away from there, like into like here, Aurora, Virginia, it's not like that. I mean, everybody here is from here, and
Really?
everybody here generally doesn't go to many other places. So it was a really nice experience in that market. What's interesting about that market, when times got tough in the last recession, the DC market actually held its own. It kept going. It was a strong market. I mean, I'm not
Jobs.
saying it didn't have some impact, but boy, it was a solid market. All right, let's talk. I think we got time for maybe one more big question. I always call it the timing question. And I was telling everybody last summer, I said, you know what, we're headed right into the teeth of a recession. I can't tell you when. We just don't know. There's so many variables and so many factors. I mean, you got price increases going through the roof for a couple of years, followed by rate increases. That's usually going to spell, that's going to dampen any good hot market.
Right.
But at the same time, we've got a shortage of housing in the country, and it's mainly affordable housing, but nonetheless, there's a shortage of housing, so that creates a pressure on the demand side, which means there's obviously a shortage on the supply side. And we don't know how long it's going to be there. At a certain point, the consumer is just not going to be able to take it anymore. And they're going to say, you know what? I'm just going to sit still. It's already started to happen. Transaction volume is, for the agents out there, this, again, not to scare you, just to give you facts. 4 years ago, the average agent was doing about 11 transactions a year. 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, the average agent was doing between 5 and 6 transactions a year. Now, this year, the average agent is doing less than 2 transactions a year. Okay. So just ask any title company, they'll tell you their business was down dramatically. So the writing's on the wall. The financial institutions started laying people off last summer, and financial institutions don't lay people off because of what happened. They lay people off because what they believe is going to happen, right? They're anticipating which way the market's going, and in jobs and GDP and all those things that matter to us determining the health of a market. So in any case, sorry to ramble here, but when it comes to all that, it seems to me like private lending is a good place to be because when people are not able to borrow in the conventional markets like they used to, they go to private lending. Am I sort of right there, or kind of tell me a little about what you think about?
100% right. And for us, we get calls sometimes from our investors like, okay, we're paying you 8%, and this is a public fund, so it's not so easy to go out and make changes to it, by the way. But why aren't you paying me more? Because everybody else is charging more. That's a very valid question. The answer is, well, we're getting flooded with deals, so I could increase rates. That is true. All my peers are doing it. The reason I'm not doing that is because I want to be super picky right now, because I agree, we don't know what is coming. Recession, no recession, soft landing, collapse. We don't really know. So I'd rather have a really strong, healthy portfolio going into this than to be trying to maximize profits, because I'm going to be on the other side. So we've chosen not to raise our pricing to our borrowers, and instead we're going to slow demand by only cherry picking the best deals we can get. But absolutely, this is a great business to be in. But this is a great business to be in no matter what the market is. People always need money to do transactions, and people buy and sell in every market. So we just happen to do a little bit better when it's a harder market, but we do just fine in a good market too. And I just want to mention this. You say recession, maybe not coming. We don't know. Totally agree with you. Some might argue we've already been through a recession because we have seen prices go down in housing. Now, that's not really reflecting in the CPI numbers, but we have seen that across the country. And we have seen 2 quarters of GDP, negative GDP. We are seeing the inverted yield curve. All these things that we learn about, like what's the signals for a recession? We've seen these, but we just haven't had the government tell us we're in a recession yet, because now the definition is vague. Now they make it vague so they can manipulate. So we don't know what a recession technically is. They're saying because job market is strong, it's under 5%. Which is kind of the normal, like a normal rate. So if we're under that, then we can't be in a recession. So we're not technically calling it that. So we could go right through a recession, not even know, right?
Yeah. Yep. Well, I do believe we're definitely headed for in traditional terms that we would normally consider a recession. That the challenge is when can we, if we all knew when, we'd all be gajillionaires. But the last one, that when the really smart people started calling for it, they didn't say when, they just said it's coming, and it was about 5 years. I'm going to put myself on the line here. I know I'll take some heat for this, but I'm going to project that it's going to be somewhere in 2025 that it's really we're going to feel it, because there's all the things that we talked about here today, Kevin, but also in the commercial market, a lot of the commercial loans, the way they basically reprice every 5 years, and there's a bunch of those going to be coming due about that time frame.
1.5 trillion in the next 2 years.
I know, it's amazing.
1.5 trillion is coming due.
Yeah. So I think there's that factor, and plus the fact that the consumer is going to eventually is going to realize, you know what, I just can't keep going this way. I've got to cut back on my spending. When the consumer does that, that's 330 some odd million people. It's going to happen. But again, I don't want to scare people. I just want people to be prepared. And I want to give you a really good plug, Kevin, because you've done an amazing job of being candid and being, really telling it like it is. And that's what people need to hear. They need to hear the truth. And the other thing I like about your model is I think it's perfectly positioned. You're 20% commercial, 80% residential. And the fact that you're 80% residential and you're dealing with a lot of, singles and duplexes and things like that, means you're really well diversified and you've got liquidity. So if for all the investors out there, if you're looking for a place to place your money, in 3 years, you probably maybe only heard this say one time, that this is the kind of model you want to look at to place your money. You're going to get 8%. Be happy about that, because look at what historically what happens in the stock market. Right. You're doing pretty good, and it's backed by a physical, tangible, income producing asset. Right. It doesn't get any better than that. And then for the borrowers, you've got a place to go to, at least in the 4 locations. So kudos to you for defining and maintaining that model, because it's not that risky. In the world of real estate, it's considered conservative, and it's got staying power. You're not only going to survive, you're going to thrive. I'll go out on a limb and say, I predict in 27, 28, I believe we're going to go down and come back up again. The people that will be ready are the ones who made it through the lean years, and the people that make it through the lean years are people like you, Kevin, that have a sound model. So, in any case, so it's a long way of saying
thank you.
Kudos to you. Hey, by the way, the website, pinefinancialgroup.com, is that correct?
Yep, pinefinancialgroup.com. So if you're looking to invest, or if you're looking to borrow, if you're just looking to chat, give me a call. We'll talk. I love talking real estate.
Okay, good. So on there is a way for people to, email, even maybe phone call or leave a message, that kind of thing?
Yeah, in fact, phone calls are going to be hard. My gatekeeper is amazing. She's fantastic. It's going to be hard to get through that, but I do respond to emails. So Kevin@pinefinancialgroup.com. I'm the one that reads my emails. I'm the one that responds to those. Okay.
All right, good. Well, listen, I just want to thank you again for doing this. I know we went a little bit long, but it's such a good subject, and it's a very important subject. Everybody listening, this is one of the critical pieces of investing, and it's becoming more critical because of what's happening in the financial market. So just be prepared. Go to pinefinancialgroup.com, and it's Kevin at pinefinancialgroup.com is the email.
Yes. And can I mention one more thing about, I wrote
Absolutely.
a report about the recession. So look, I'm not an economist. I'm no expert, but I do see a lot of resemblance in the early 1990s. Yeah. This is after the savings and loans. So we touched on this a little bit in the episode. It's pretty similar to what we're going through right now. So is it going to be the same? No, it's going to be different, but it does have, who was it? History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Mark Twain? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we can learn something from what happened in the 90s. So I dug deep into that recession, exactly why it happened and what happened. And I wrote a report to compare the two. So you can get that for free at thepinereport.com.
Pinereport.com. Okay.
Thepinereport.com.
Thank you. I'm gonna definitely do this. Everybody listening, just please remember that too. Pinereport.com.
Yeah, it's don't forget thepinereport.com.
Gotcha. Yep. So, okay. So everybody listening, if you could please leave a review for the podcast, we both appreciate it. And by the way, Kevin, you also have a podcast I'd like to introduce everybody. What's the name of your podcast?
It's the Real Estate Educators Podcast, and we focus on mostly realtors, but anyone who wants real estate investors as clients, the content creation, like how do you add value to investors so you can get their business? So that's kind of that's where we're focused. And I think you're going to be on one of our episodes, aren't you?
Yeah, I hope so. You're absolutely right. And so what's the name of it again? Please repeat the podcast.
Yep. The Real Estate Educators.
Real Estate Educators. I love it. Everybody that knows me out there knows we lead with education. That's the beginning of everything. And I did my college degree. I don't use it all right now, but I learned how to learn in college. I learned how to think abstractly, and all of it helped me in real estate tremendously. So get your education. It's Real Estate Educators. Real Estate
Educators, and I can't wait to hear your story.
Yeah. Yeah, well, hopefully it's as good as yours. So, and guys, when you're out there leaving the review, please visit again pinefinancialgroup.com. Get in touch with Kevin if you're an investor looking to place your funds. I suggest make this part of your investment model. Hedge yourself against what could be coming down the road. We do believe there's going to be a recession. We just can't tell you when. If we could, again, we'd all be gajillionaires, but that's not realistic. We just have to not panic, but prepare. And for all the real estate agents out there, definitely listen into the podcast, right? Real Estate Educators Podcast. And when you're online, make sure you visit globalinvestoragent.com one last time. Click on the Learn More button and see how you can make this part of your real estate agent model so that you're prepared for any market. It doesn't matter which way the market goes. Investors are always investing. That's just the bottom line. So you guys take care of yourselves. We will see you on the next Massive Passive Cash Flow podcast. And God bless you and your families.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cash Flow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.